Okay, welcome to my talk. I'm going to use my phone as a remote, so we're going to see how that works out. I've done it before, but I was before the pandemic. So maybe in the meantime, phones forgot how to do that. I don't know. We'll see. So welcome to my talk about career paths. I want to start by telling you about someone that got inspired by my love for pen and paper role-playing. So who here knows about that? D&D, pen and paper? Who loves it? Yeah? That's good. Those of you who don't know, don't worry, you will still understand what I'm talking about. I'm a real nerd, so that's just me representing my nerdness on stage. Okay, so this is Taylor. Meet Taylor. They're a tailoring apprentice. I know I'm not very creative with naming. Taylor's been working for a while in this shop, and they're not quite sure what their future will bring. And usually how you advance in tailoring is you kind of hone your skills, and eventually you start managing other tailors. You know, Taylor isn't quite sure if that's something they want to do, and what else is out there? Well, you probably guessed it. That's actually a metaphor, and Taylor is actually a software developer, okay? But, you know, I wanted to make it a bit more medieval. So to get advice, they go to the village elder, and the village elder tells them, well, there are many, many paths before you. Hero's journey, of course. And you get to choose who you want to be. And if you want to experience a bit more adventure than what has been laid out in front of you, you have to find your path, and you have to join a party and go with them on adventures and do some quests. So Taylor asks, how do I figure out what to choose? And I think I just killed my computer by unplugging it. So I'm gonna just start that again. Here we go. We're back where we started. So Taylor asks the village elder, how do I figure out what my path is? How do I figure out what to choose? And the elder said, well, first, you have to look at your strengths and your needs. That's the first step. So what I'm going to try now with you, we're going to try this out together, right? I have 3 questions for you, and I'm going to ask you to take a moment to look at these questions and think about them. So the first one is, which parts of your job do you enjoy most? What parts don't benefit you? And what do you care about outside of work? So just take a moment, please, to think about this. Take your time. Okay, I hope those following at home watching the recording are also thinking about these questions. Now, I would like you to do something a bit different, right? Because I try to bring the interaction in here. I would like you to find someone next to you. If you're sitting alone in your row, try to talk to someone in the row in front of you or behind you. And I would like you to take 5 minutes and, oh, I'm sorry, that was too fast. I would like you to take 5 minutes and actually discuss these questions. Make sure you both have time to share. And for those of you who are watching the recording, maybe take some notes and find someone to talk to later. But this is quite important because it's about figuring out what your needs are and your strengths. So let's take 5 minutes for this, starting as soon as I get this video to play. So find someone next to you. Make sure you both have time to share and talk about these questions. Okay, thank you so much. Finish your conversations. Wow, that was awesome to see. You all had stuff to say. It was great to see you all talk to each other. That's kind of my jam. People talk to each other. So do more of that later. Now, back to Taylor. So Taylor was asking themselves the same questions, and their answers were, well, I love solving problems and I love leading. I don't really like rigid processes. And outside of work, I really care about people and community building. So what's next, they asked. Well, said the elder, I'll tell you about all of the different paths I know about. And I encourage you to find people that chose those paths that interest you. Talk to them about what their day-to-day looks like. Ask them about what they do and don't enjoy about their work. And ask them for the story. How did they get there? Look for what matches with your needs and strengths. And this will help you find your path. So, shall we look at some of these? Let's look at some of these. Fighter, right? Individual contributor. It's the obvious one. Despite the rumors, there are plenty of options of staying an individual contributor. You can keep honing your craft. You can level up without taking on line management. And that doesn't mean that there won't be leadership as part of your role. Most of the time, you will take on tech lead or architecture heads. You will be expected to mentor others. You will be facilitating discussions about architecture, about system design, about production readiness. Your influence becomes a bit more indirect. You'll be less the person that implements a feature, but more the person that guides, that asks questions, that supports difficult problems. So just be prepared to not see the immediate result of your work, but have to be a bit more patient for it, or see others excel with your guidance and leadership. As you grow in this role, you're no longer going to be focused on just one team. You're going to be focused on several teams or groups of teams. You can progress to staff engineer, principal engineer, distinguished engineer, or fellow, all of these wonderful career ladder steps. Well, if you want to know more about all of this, I do have some resources at the end of these slides, which I will share on Slack. But just be left with this. It's totally okay to not want to take on line management. And it's totally okay to stay an individual contributor, and there are many options. So some of you, like Taylor, might have heard that in order to move up in the world, you eventually have to start managing others. Now you know there are more options, but nevertheless, let's not dismiss this. Right? I think you can totally choose to be a healer, like a support role, in being an engineering manager. You choose this if you really care about people, if you want to grow people through mentoring and coaching. There are plenty of skills to learn that are beyond engineering. I personally learned so much from being a manager. I think the big factor in this line management work is that you're working with all of the management layers that are above you, right? They have ideas of what they want to see, and you're someone who takes that and puts that into your team. But ideally, there's also the other direction, right? You are on the ground. You're talking to engineers about their problems, their challenges, their successes. All of this is what the above need to know about. And you sponsor individuals by recommending them for opportunities. You help them make a plan for their growth, for what they want to learn. You recommend conferences to them, training courses. You find them the right people in the company to talk to. And sometimes you're also responsible for changing the culture within your department, within your company. Sometimes you're working on career ladders, diversity, equity, inclusion. There are so many different things of how you influence. And as you do that, you might have less time to actually code. So depending on the company, you can say goodbye to the hands-on. You will be involved in hiring, in promotions. You will be dealing with humans that struggle with their jobs. And those are the hard parts where your skills of empathy and leadership really come to play. So it's a worthwhile path, but it's not necessarily an easy one. Neither are the others. Just depends on what you like. I would say something that's really, really important in this role is seeing the individual and looking at them and their needs, which is why one-on-ones are so important. So again, I put a couple of resources about this at the end of the presentation. You could be a mercenary, right? Be a contractor. If you move from project to project, this gives you a lot of different insights. You can learn how different companies do things. You can bring in your special knowledge about maybe software craft, but actually learn a lot about the different business domains you work in. You don't have to struggle so much with the existing company politics and structure because your career is not dependent on them. It gives you a lot of independence and freedom. This might be great if you want to take more time to go to conferences or to do side projects. This could be complicated depending on which country you live in and what the rules are about creating your own business. So it's a fascinating journey, and I would encourage you to not dismiss it just because you haven't thought about it before or because it seems intimidating. There are people in this community and in other communities and in local meetups that will help you, tell you about their experience of becoming a freelancer, becoming a contractor. In a similar way, you could be part of a consultancy. There you do have the opportunity to be employed and have all the benefits from that, but you also get to see different projects. It might mean that you have to travel a lot and that you don't get to choose where you go. So it all depends. The good news is, often these consultancies, you find other people that also have a big passion for their craft, and you can learn from each other and you can build an influence within your clients. Sometimes you're actually there to change them, and you're much freer to do so because you're not part of the political structure. So that's something to consider. So, we have a wizard. Wizards are, in my interpretation, the technical coaches. A technical coach is there to teach. Is it a specific programming language? Is it a pattern, a way of working? How to do refactoring well? How to do continuous delivery? You have a subject that you know a lot about, or an area that you know a lot about, and your special skills are going to conferences, giving presentations, maybe writing a book, holding workshops, creating learning. You grow as you make a name for yourself. You use conferences and your book to get more gigs, where you go into companies and teach them. You get to build the next generation of software crafters. As a wizard, there's a lot of things that seem magic to others, but for you, it's just stuff that you practice a lot and that you know others can learn too. So, maybe this is for you. If you enjoy teaching, if you enjoy seeing people understand things and their eyes light up. There's this concept of leading from the back of the room. I can tell you from personal experience, it's an amazing, amazing feeling when someone gets something and the only thing you've done is provide them with the space and the resources to learn. So one of the difficult parts of this is that you're going to have to be able to sell yourself. You're going to have to convince a company that it makes sense to have a technical coach, be it for just 2 weeks, or every Friday over several months, or sometimes even for larger projects. There could also be permanent positions for technical coach. I know there are. In big companies, sometimes they recognize they need this. But that doesn't mean that everyone in the company actually wants to take advantage. So you need then to sell yourself within the company. There's a lot to this, but it can be super rewarding. We have the developer advocate, the bard. I hope you guessed that there would be a bard. You love open source. You're super active. You make videos. You go to conferences. You create communities. You start new meetups. You influence the product roadmap because you're the advocate for the developers. You represent the needs to their needs to the company, and you represent the company to the community. You're advertising, this is the best tool out there. We're always listening to you. Look at all the stuff that you gave us feedback about, and now it's part of the product. Have you seen someone advertising a product before? I think it's an awesome way to get paid to do this, right? What's really important here is, in order to not be seen as just a salesperson, is to build a strong relationship with the community, to listen to their needs, to be a strong advocate in the company for what they need to have. To talk to others that are doing similar things to find out what is the best way to make a developer-friendly API. How do we get developers to actually try out our tools, build stuff that we could never think of with our APIs, use our IDE in ways we haven't thought about, hire someone from the community that have built an awesome plugin to be part of our company. All of these things are part of the Bard's life. And, maybe you want to go rogue. Create your own company, become a CTO. There are many organizations that help you find founding partners, but it's a jungle out there. Honestly, only the rogue can navigate it. Investors are tricky, right? It's very much a pressure situation. It feels like you have to sacrifice a lot of your private life to do this. But maybe you can figure out a different way of finding financing. Maybe the company can be bootstrapped without external investors. This stuff is super, super difficult. One thing you can consider is, instead of trying to go that way immediately, being one of the early technical hires in a startup, seeing what it's like. So that's my recommendation. Takes a lot of networking, but sometimes you can just apply for programs that will pair you up and you can figure out ideas. Personally, to be honest, I've never been the person with the idea. I've always been the person that just builds it and makes it happen. But it's a fascinating journey. When your company grows, you start to hire people, you become a leader again, and you take on so much stuff in a startup that you normally don't get to see ever, because it's so varied and you have to figure it out. So it's a steep learning curve, but it's also an amazing opportunity. Well, you've got the sorcerers. Somehow they keep our site alive, right? When you're a software engineer, hopefully you're living in a DevOps culture, so you're interested in the stuff running, you're part of the on-call, you're well compensated for that, but you care about stuff running properly. You don't just hand off something to someone else. Big companies care about the availability of their systems. When your clients are enterprises, they want in the contract what kind of availability you have. There's the service level agreements. Site reliability engineers, or SREs, are experts in that field. You care so much about infrastructure as code. You are deeply invested in all of the cloud services. You can figure out the most weird Azure documentation. But what's really important here is, just like quality advocates in a company, you're not there to do all this yourself. You're there to make sure the site is available. And that means inside the company, you're the expert that enables teams to build reliable stuff. You make it super easy for developers to deploy their things. You make it super hard for them to fail. You help them set up their monitors. You help them care about their stuff being available. Maybe you're the one who's on call, but it's on you to actually influence and create a culture. So that's how you can grow in that role and really make a difference in a company. So I'm really advocating against this being a silo. It's all about creating something together, creating awareness. And I think it's quite easy to make a lateral move into this field. If you're already an engineer and your company has stuff they deploy to the cloud, get interested, get invested. Ask if you could move into that direction. Well, there's also the hype, the fancy Warlock. And my computer is super battery saving. It's good for the environment. So, the fancy Warlock. I'll figure this out. Nope. Okay. You will see the Warlock another time. It's fine. So, machine learning and data engineers, right? These are people that care about data. They care about artificial intelligence. They want to explore all these different interesting problems. They have a scientific mindset. They have an exploratory mindset. They don't necessarily have to build stuff that lasts, but sometimes they do have to interface with stuff that lasts. They may be building scripts that are not tested the same way that our core software business domain is. I think there's a really good way of actually going into another lateral move, because you're going to be having these kinds of things come up in companies as they jump on the AI hype. There will be projects in your company that you can try this stuff out. I have talked to people who have been software engineers, even before the AI hype, decided they wanted to become machine learning engineers, did a whole training program in their company, got trained up. After 1 year, they became contractors and made a lot of money on the open market. It's a big deal right now. I would say it's a different way of working. It's something where you're more experimental, more scientific. I would encourage you, if you are interested in those things, just try stuff out. There's so much out there already online that you could do. Well, I skipped another slide in my haste of making my computer run again. So I'm just going to talk about it a cappella, as they say. We have all of these things that I told you about, but they're boxes, right? You don't have to fit in those boxes. There's so much more out there. You could become a quality engineer. You could become an agile coach. You could become a project manager. You could become a product owner. You could become a technical writer. You could become a recruiter for tech people. This is not there to limit you. This is there to show you all of the different options. And if you have ever played some role-playing game, you know how the, game facilitator always groans when people choose all these special classes that are like not the beaten path. It might be a bit more difficult to find that because there are less people going that path, but it doesn't make it less worthwhile. And you'll find awesome communities in all of these different areas. So give it a try. Take a look outside of the box. So all of these things were about the path you choose, the classes, right, in the role-playing games. But there's so much more. That's just the beginning. I don't know how many people are aware that if you've always worked in one size of company, you could have a completely different experience in a different size company. If you've always worked in large enterprises, maybe a startup is a better environment for you. Maybe you feel safe with having all of the benefits of being in a bigger company. It does make a difference. The industry you work in, maybe you work for the financial sector. Maybe you work for a newspaper. There are different cultures just based on that. Maybe software development is the main thing your company does. That's a different environment. Maybe you actually work in an agency and you get projects that you never see again after they're delivered. The culture of the company is the biggest influence factor. It can depend on the company base. Where are they based? What country are they in? It mostly depends on the leadership. How are they acting in the company? This is the stuff where I would say it's hard to tell from the outside. It has the biggest influence on how I feel in a company. And I try to figure out as much as I can beforehand, before I decide to join somewhere. If you have the luxury, if you have the option of being picky, go and try and find someone who actually works there to talk to. If you check out reviews, might not work so well. If you get a job through the community, big bonus, right? Someone from the community can tell you what it's like to be there. Maybe it's even a sponsor of a conference like this, so you already know they care about this stuff. So with all of these roles in mind, you can try and forge your own career path in a company that has a good culture. So keep that in mind. And the final thing, should never be underestimated, is what do you do outside of work? What do you do to relax? To have something different? Maybe your main gig is you're writing novels and you're just doing some contracting a couple of days a month to pay the bills. That's totally fine. Software development doesn't have to be your big passion. Maybe you're really into software development and outside of work, you have the luxury of being able to do meetups and learn more. I would say, with all of what I've told you, please don't underestimate that. Think about how to work in your life, other priorities, other needs. Because companies, they are not loyal to you. People are. So, back to Taylor. What happened to them? Let me tell you their story. They joined the local software crafter community in Germany. They became an agile software engineer in a consultancy. During that time, they tried their hands on testing and product ownership, as well as some agile coaching. They gained the perspective of those different roles in software teams. They learned a lot by taking on challenges, every task that no one wanted to take because it was difficult, and they paired with lots of different colleagues at lots of different clients. When they realized they weren't learning anything anymore, they went away to London and joined a software craft consultancy. There, they did another apprenticeship, eventually graduated, discovered their love for technical coaching, learned more and more about leadership. Then they decided to forge their own path, became an independent contractor, developing software for different clients. A startup client they really, really liked working at offered Taylor an engineering manager position. They jumped on this opportunity, learned how to manage engineers. The company closed, so they went to a different company that was a bit larger. They learned even more about engineering management. So much, they weren't even coding anymore. Taylor realized they needed to be hands-on again and went to be a tech lead and engineer at a startup. And then, after becoming founding CTO at another startup didn't really work out, they moved on and became a staff engineer at a scale-up. And now, they're questioning again what their next move is. Wait a minute, that's so weird. Taylor had the exact same experience that I did? So Taylor went back to the wise village elder and said, well, you told me that I could choose a path and move forward on it. I've tried that for over a decade, but it didn't really exactly work out. I've been moving roles back and forth, but haven't really found what I should be doing. What gives? Well, the elder smiled and told them, that's a very normal experience. Let me frame it like this. You get to change your mind, try different paths. You will learn things from each of them that you can use to help you in other paths. And to be fair, there's a lot of randomness in this world. Not everything has to make sense. So, here's my message to you. When it comes to your path, in the end, only you can make the choice. And it's up to you to make it a success, right? Well, there's just one more thing. Going back to the gaming metaphor and some hard truths that you might not already be aware of. You don't choose your difficulty level for this whole journey. If you don't fit the stereotype of your role, there are many obstacles in your way. That's one of the reasons that I moved so much. I kept bumping my head on the glass ceiling. Boink, boink. And it's hard to accept for me that many obstacles aren't something that if I'm just smart enough, I can figure out a way through. Ducks. That's why it's great to have community. Finding others that support you, give you compassionate, caring feedback. And the best part, you get to choose which feedback you take on. Quack. So everything I've talked about today is from my perspective and with my knowledge. I feel I have a lot more to learn. I love having conversations about careers, and this has been super one-sided and very generalized. So here's my offer. Reach out to me on the NewCrafts Slack or on LinkedIn. You have to mention NewCrafts because I get a lot of requests. And we will find some time to chat about your career. Thank you. And I have time for questions. Yes.
This is one of those questions that's a comment disguised as a question.
A comment disguised as a question.
Do you think that?
Do I think that?
Sometimes some people actually thrive on variety and change, but they don't always realise that. So it can feel like you're searching for the right job, the right career, the right role, and one day you'll find it, and you're not necessarily noticing that actually you just like change, and that's okay. And maybe you are going to keep changing, and you're never going to find the right thing, because you actually what you're really doing is just having a journey, and journeys are okay.
So you're saying, do you think that? That was your question. It's all about the journey and not necessarily about the destination. So the question was that some people might enjoy moving and the change instead of just finding the thing for them. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at Taylor and Taylor's career. What else? Yeah?
Yes, I have one comment and one question.
Okay, comment and question, yes.
The comments, I totally agree with what you say
Mhm.
about making sure that you will fit into the environment
Mhm.
where you intend to work. Actually, what I tried in the past, I think it was a good idea, was to ask the company to spend one day in the premises doing anything else, not being paid, just to fit the atmosphere.
So let me repeat that for the recording. You were saying that in order to get to a place where you really make sure that you fit in with a company, you can ask to spend a day working with them to see what it's like. Thank you for the tip. And what was your question?
And the question is about changing industry.
Mhm.
For example, I've been working on web development for many years, and I have kind of a dream in my head about going to the video game industry, which is very different, I guess. So I was wondering if you had any experience that was related to that or any tips.
Right. So the question is, if you wanted to change industry, like from web development into game development, if there were any tips about that. So I personally have not done this, but I've talked to some people who have done it. I, again, love having conversations about careers. And what I've seen people do is, one, do this on the side. So they would create indie games, projects, and then use those to apply for game companies. The gaming industry is really, really tough, right? You've got big companies that it's really hard to get into, that have crunch time and horrible ways of working. Obviously there are exceptions. This is a generalization. And you have the option of building indie games, and then you have to do a lot of work to get your funding and get the cloud and all of that. I've also met someone who went and was already a software developer with a lot of experience. And he said to his company, I'm leaving. I'm going to do a bachelor in games development, right? I'm going to get a degree in games development. And their company was like, please don't go. You're the only one that can support this difficult client. So what he does is basically finances his life through being fourth level support for this difficult client like once a week, and doing the game development course on the side. And part of that course is getting an internship at an actual company. So yeah, and other people have just done indie games. They've saved up some money and then taken time off to just focus on that, or have done it have their work continuing as part-time. I don't know if that's helpful in an answer to your question, but I would say with changing industries, again, please talk to people that are in the industry, try to figure out what their life is like, try to figure out how they got in there. I think with software development, we have this advantage of having so many different paths that all lead to the same thing. So, sorry to tell you, we have to talk to people. What else? We have a couple more minutes if you have questions. So Taylor is looking for a new job. I hope this gets cut out of a video before it gets shown to my colleagues. But yeah. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for listening, for participating in this interactive part with the last session before the keynote. And I really hope you enjoy the keynote and get home safely. Have conversations.